Hello, thanks for joining me, astrologer Patrick Arundell, for another deep dive special. This one on the Capricorn full moon of June the 24th at 7:39 p.m. Universal Central Time. As ever, my chart is based on Greenwich. Now, obviously Capricorn full moon is an interesting one because here the moon is at its weakest point in its journey. It's in detriment because it's opposite the sign that it governs, which is Cancer, which is where the sun resides. So here we got a bit of a chilling of emotion, if you like, or a more practical vibration around the moon. But what I'm going to do is explore the event itself, so the wider circumstances. I'm going to share the birth chart wheel with you. And also then I'm going to go through each of the 12 zodiac signs to give you a forecast for the following 2 weeks from that time. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd love it if you did now. And also, if you'd like to grab your free daily horoscopes direct to your device each morning, please click on the link below. Or you can get your free natal horoscope also below. Or if you want to take advantage of my very special offer, 12-month forecast, character analysis combination, 30% off, unique to you based on your birth data to give you searing insights in the times to come and to guide your moves, please also see the link below. So on the screen, you can see the event chart for when the full moon occurs. Now, the wonderful thing is that Jupiter, the planet of growth, may be in retrograde now, but it's forging a very enabling trine to the sun in Cancer. Now, 120 degrees trine between Jupiter and the sun is one of the luckiest of all the planetary influences. But clearly it's asking us to embrace the more emotional dynamic because they're both in water signs. Also, Chiron, the comet of healing, the opportunity to heal our own inner wound, is in the 4th house, very redolent of the energies of Cancer. So that's fascinating. And because we have a lot of energy in the 7th house, it's the sun, but then we also have Mercury in Gemini along with the North Node, and the descendant, and very close to the descendant, is the part of fortune. This particular event is really asking us to lean into others to try to improve our experience of relating. So overcome some of the reticence that we can have with the moon in Capricorn, which can be a bit stilted, a bit wary, a bit more focused on the material realm. But that link between Jupiter and the sun is really very uplifting. And of course, Jupiter also forges a sextile to the moon. So that's lovely too. But I also want to point out that Venus is in a glorious angle with Neptune. And when these two are relating in such a perfect way, particularly with Neptune in the 3rd house, it's at home in Pisces. The 3rd house is how we think. Not so good for a kind of Pisces orientated planet. But to have that angle with Venus still in Cancer, but in the deep 8th house, I think there can be conversations that do help us to understand more about what makes one another tick. So the opportunity to use the full moon to bring into the open perhaps something that needs a rebalance, or to bring to the surface in a reward, a high point of something that is to do with how we balance our more practical reactions and interactions with our more needing of emotional responses. And there's a lot of opportunity to connect well on this particular event. What are the challenges? Well, Venus is opposed by Pluto, suggesting that if we do get talking to someone and they really do captivate us, then this could be a relationship that we find is very hard to resist. It may even be a financial opportunity that's presented itself because of them going across the 2nd and 8th house cusps. So some kind of interaction can be fascinating in that regard, but there's also the potential for some kind of inhibition because in the same houses, Mars and Saturn are going face to face. So what does that mean? Well, Mars in Leo is certainly very, very charismatic for sure, and very alluring. And perhaps Saturn in the second house in Aquarius in retrograde is asking us not to get too caught up with those more Capricornian ways of thinking about people. You know, what do they do for a living? What car do they drive? What sort of house do they live in? You know, what are their future prospects? Do they have savings? These are all very traditional considerations. So I think we're being asked to go with the more spiritual dimension, which is how does it feel, and entrust a little bit more faith. And that's coming through the magnificent link between Neptune and Venus, the magnificent link between Jupiter, the Moon, and also the Sun. And because we have got that seventh house energy, just being aware that, you know, however well off we are or however secure we feel, if we don't have very good emotional or spiritual interactions with others, our lives are not going to be particularly enriching. So I think this is quite an interesting Capricornian full moon, to be honest. And it does suggest that if we are a little bit emotional in our response to situations, that we embrace the more practical reality of that Capricornian moon. If we're someone who has a good balance around these things, then perhaps it's getting a nice trim between what we need to do for ourselves, which is the moon in the first house, which is very fresh. We'd never think about the moon in Capricorn as being fresh, but actually it's a very fresh first house location for this event. And the balance with the sun, I think having Mercury in the seventh house in Gemini really helps the whole thing flow. Now, of course, we continue to have Saturn in Uranus in pretty well an exact square. It's only 1 degree apart. They came into the exact point of 90 degrees on the 14th. So the week commencing the 14th of June, the square was repeated. After it happened first in February, it happens again in December. It's the biggest event of this year. And I was thinking the other day, you know, I did a special on Prince Harry and Meghan Markle about was their relationship or attraction, what was it about? You know, was it based on a kind of genuine rapport, which I think it is. Whatever you think of them, I think there is a genuine rapport. But I do feel that the way he's pushed back and kept revealing things that have been deeply uncomfortable to his family, which represents the kind of if you like, the establishment tradition, is very radical. You know, the truth planet is Uranus, and it's in a sign that it doesn't like being in. It's full in the fixed sign of Taurus. But however bruising it's been for everyone concerned, he seems to be absolutely determined to keep revealing things. And then, of course, you know, COVID, we're finding out more and more about how maybe that came about. I think many of us had, you know, the hunch that maybe it was produced from a lab, and there seems to be more and more, you know, compelling discussion that makes us think there is something in that. So I think that we're going to see a lot more sort of tussles between how things have been and how things need to change in some kind of way. You know, you've got people wanting to manifest their individuality like never before. Some people find it very challenging, all this change. Other people think, you know, it's about time that there was a much greater emphasis on equalities, whether it's sexual orientation, whether it's mental health, whether it's poverty, whether it's based on race, creed, or religion. Equalities is very much represented by the two planets that rule the sign of Aquarius, which is about the higher principle. It's about finding a higher harmonic, a higher frequency of truth. Now, I believe that the age of Aquarius will more formally begin once Pluto goes into Aquarius in 23. Of course, that's only for a few months, goes back to Capricorn, so it will be from 24 that it really takes hold. And of course, some of the things coming in that, you know, are very Aquarian. We mustn't think that Aquarius energy is a kind of panacea for all of the society's issues, because, working from home has worked well for some people. It's worked well for me for 25, 30 years. But for others, it leads to enormous isolation, and people need interaction with people. So Aquarius energy can be quite detached, cold, dystopian. It's not necessarily a cure-all. So interesting that the kind of more cool, shy, and rigid energies of the moon in Capricorn are being challenged by the emotionality of both the Sun and Venus in Cancer, and also Jupiter in the sign of Pisces, also a water sign. Please stay with me for your individual zodiac sign forecast. Now, Aries, this event for you suggests that finding a good balance between making sure that you feel comfortable and at ease in your home environment, you're enjoying the actual physical space and who you live with and how you live there, all feels cozy and comfortable. But hold on, what about your work? So maybe I think the full moon is asking you to feel comfortable about where you work. If you work from home, this full moon actually may embrace that brilliantly. If you have been at home but have been used to being at work, you may yearn to get back there and be hoping that the lockdown can be eased enough for you to actually get back to some semblance of pre-lockdown normality, or the new normality as it's being called. Now there's also the potential, because you've got Mars and Saturn going across your 5th and 11th house energies, there's also the potential for some big judgment calls around relationships. You might, with the moon in the cool side of Capricorn, and it is squaring up with the 4th house cusp in this chart by about 8-9 degrees, you may be kind of thinking that your professional aspirations may need to be remodified in some way, particularly if you do a job that you don't get much sort of joy from. So feeling safe and comfortable in whatever environment you find yourself is the key for the next 2 weeks. And maybe there will be some challenges around the family or your home issues that may need some extra time and attention. Taurus, now for you, this event is all about everyday communication. But because Mars and Saturn are in an opposition, do you know, there could be a bit of a stubborn standoff going on. You've also got your ruler Venus opposed by Pluto. Someone could offer something very evocative, but it may have a bit of a catch. Maybe it is going to be a step up when it comes to your career, but in some way or another, maybe you've got to learn some new skills, go on a course, travel for this. It's going to require some kind of flexibility that maybe needs you to just bend into somewhat. Now, Gemini, this particular event occurs in your 8th solar house, longer term finances. What happens with the 2nd, 8th house access on lunations is that if we've forgotten to pay a premium, or there's a financial detail, perhaps our accounts are not quite as up to date as we thought if we work for ourselves, or there's maybe a cost that we're not expecting that can come up. The 2nd house is very much about consumption in the here and now. So with the Sun and Venus in your 2nd house, as far as a solar horoscope is concerned, your desire to enjoy the good things in life could be very strong. And it could be that you're going to have a really and compelling conversation with someone that you may find very irresistible. But in a professional context, if someone's offering you the earth, just check it out very carefully. Now, Cancer, for you, of course, this particular lunation could be that someone's going to challenge you about your present mode of thought, your direction in life. And because you've got this gathering of pocket of energies in your 12th house, this is not quite such a self-assured lunation, full moon. Of course, the moon itself occurs in your sector of relating, but I think it's much more likely that it's someone coming back to you saying that you could perhaps improve in the way that you relate. And you need to try to hear what they've got to say and not just fend it off. Now, Leo, the lunation goes across your 6th and 12th houses. That means there could be somebody around you who's not being completely open with you. There could be some opposition building up at work. Someone may find with Mars in your sign that they see you as being a bit egocentric at the present time. Please know it's not me saying that you're being egocentric. It's just that Mars in your sign can give you more stage presence. You have enough of it anyway, but with Saturn in your opposite sign, someone could be deeply jealous about that, but don't expect them necessarily to tell you to your face, because the 12th, 6th house axis can be about people going behind our backs, you know, sort of gossip that we can't control. We've all been on the end of it. It's not nice, and often it's very unfair because we don't really know where it's coming from and we don't have a platform to give a response. And for you, being admired, respected is just as important as being liked or loved. So just be aware of not sharing anything that's deeply confidential, but particularly at work. Now, Virgo, for you, this occurs across your 5th and 11th house cusp. Everybody wants a piece of you. That's really what this is saying, which is absolutely lovely. But that could be true at work as much as socially. You know, Saturn opposite Mars suggests you can only be so self-sacrificing. You can be such a good egg. You know, you can really go that extra yard to support colleagues, the people you work for. You know, you can be very virtuous in your approach. I think that this full moon is saying have some time to play, but also manage that play time, because everybody can want a piece of you. And whether it's colleagues, a line manager, a big boss, a friend, or your partner, you can't please all of the people all of the time. Something has to give. So remember to look after you. After all, your sign is based on the concept of virtue, health and hygiene. And so don't get too many late nights. You know, remember to charge your batteries. That brings us to Libra. So for you, Libra, the sun is in the part of your horoscope to do with success. You also have your ruler there as well, Venus. Now, it's possible that some kind of opportunity is being offered to you at this time, but it keeps coming up that someone, or whether it's your own inhibitions, is blocking you from really achieving what you need for yourself, whether it's romantically or it's professionally. Something is holding you back. You have to break down this opposition. It obviously is in the guise of tiny but hugely powerful Pluto, which is in mischief in its opposition with your ruler. But you also have Saturn in the 5th house of your solar chart, and never a particularly cheerful transit, but it is asking you to make the most of your talents. And also ask yourself if you are in the love relationship that's really good for you, that's really feeding your soul. If you're not, think again. But if you're wanting to aim for the stars professionally and you've got the right support structure behind you, that Jupiter Sun trine is glorious for you, and the next couple of weeks could see some kind of breakthrough. But just don't expect somebody close to you to be particularly delighted if they would prefer to you to be fussing around looking after their interests first and foremost. Which brings us to Scorpio. The sun, of course, is in your 9th house, which it's a sister water triplicity to yours. It's about expanding horizons, travel, higher education, a higher knowledge of the law, contracts and agreements, and the moon's in the part of your scope to do with everyday conversation. So really what this lunation is saying to you is that we can all say things, but how much are they connected to our deeper emotion? And that, I think, really is emphasized very much around the impact of Venus opposite your modern ruler of Pluto. So choose your words carefully. There could be some kind of tension around your home situation, family issues. Something around there is proving challenging, maybe even a close relationship. If you do have to have a conversation with someone, try to choose your words with as much diplomacy and decorum as possible. brings us to Sagittarius. Well, the sun for you is in the 8th house and the moon in your 2nd house. So again, this is balancing resources, because the 2nd house is everyday spending, where the moon is. The moon in Capricorn loves to feel secure financially. So this makes you conscious of whether you're actually getting enough money coming in. If you're not, you're going to be wanting to think of ways that you can be more enterprising. Now, if you work from home, Jupiter, your ruler, forging a brilliant link to both the moon and the sun, is glorious for you to be much more proactive. Yes, I know Jupiter is retrograde. It's retrograde in the sign of Pisces through to the 28th of July. What we can all do, stop down tools and say, well, it's retrograde, I can't do anything. We have to keep going. And because of your innately positive vibration as a human being, and because the ascendant of this chart is in your sign, combining with Juno, this is saying, look, go for it. You know, try to create the reality around your finances that you think you deserve. And with Saturn opposite Mars, you may feel that whatever you're trying to sell or promote is meeting resistance. Just try even harder. I have Saturn conjunct Mars in the 2nd house. It's hard. You have to work even harder. So it's a case of application and perspiration equals rewards. But you do have some lovely energy in your 7th house, just helping to tease open opportunities and conversations that could be helpful to you. Now that takes us to Capricorn. Now for you, it's all about relationships, this particular event. If you feel a relationship isn't working, then this is really going to flag it. It could be anything to do with a lack of sexual intimacy, a lack of money, different values, that they're not very in tune with you emotionally as you see it. And, you know, you could really feel that if something isn't working, you may be thinking about whether you want to bail out, to be honest, because with Chiron in the part of your horoscope to do with your emotions, and also in this particular event chart too, the lack of simpatico that you may be experiencing can feel very viscerally raw. And of course, because Pluto is opposed by Venus, your desire for that kind of intimate, fully functioning, fully working relationship is going to be very, very strong. If your relationship is going better, I think this can be a time when you and your partner can celebrate some kind of extra dynamism coming into the relationship, and that's wonderful. And of course, Neptune's in your sector of everyday communication in a beautiful link with Venus. So, you know, if it is sweet music between you, it can get sweeter still. That brings us to Aquarius. Now, Aquarius, this sun position is your 6th house of practicalities. The moon's in your 12th house of secrets, of potential enemies, of psychological wounds, of anxieties. It's not right up there with Pluto yet, but Pluto's just tucked up behind Aquarius. So it is sort of suggesting that if there is something that you're really feeling is quite challenging at an emotional level in your situation, it may still be manifesting itself. And with Mars opposite Saturn, there could be a sense of frustration. But also, if you want to improve your structures, the physical world of your situation, get fitter, eat better, and all those kind of sort of tangible things, that can feed into your emotional energy as well. We went for a bike ride yesterday and I was feeling a bit cheesed off because we're trying to move and it's all been very stuck. And, you know, the environment's closing in a bit because we work from home. We went for like a 5 or 6 mile bike ride in the countryside, and I came back and I really felt that the endorphins were popping in my brain and I felt so much better. So to embrace the more psychological side of our nature as Aquarius people, particularly with Pluto there, important to try to get fitter, because that fitness and better diet will feed into our mentality, our emotionality and our spirituality. But the moon in the 12th house is a sensitive position, but of course there is some other good stuff going on. You know, we do have Mercury forging a lovely link with Saturn in your sign. So if you're envisioning something new that's creative and different, you may need to withdraw a little bit on this full moon over the next couple of weeks, despite having the North Node and Mercury in the bubbly sign of Gemini. But what this is doing is just giving you the chance to repurpose yourself and to pivot towards the things that are more practically necessary at this stage. And once you get through to the sun moving through the sign of Leo, where it's at home, which it's not in the sign of Cancer, and we have the Aquarius full moon, I think you'll be much better equipped to start feeling that you're connecting to others. And don't forget, the first 3 weeks of July are absolutely fantastic for the potential for romance, greater interaction with others at a much more enriching level. So if you feel a little bit isolated, you feel a bit cut off or detached from others, keep the faith, because the larger trend coming is good, and there are opportunities for you and for me over the next couple of weeks. But we can't change the fact that our two rulers in a squabble for most of the year, off and on, is having quite an impact. And so it's edging forwards, changing some things in a manageable way, most of all having space, freedom and flexibility around your everyday routines. If you feel really hemmed in, do try to get out for a walk, cycle, ride, swim, run, or get together with friends if it's possible now the lockdown is easing, because it's really going to soothe your soul. Which brings us to Pisces. Now, this particular event occurs in your 11th house of friends, your future, and your higher hopes. The sun's in the part of your horoscope to do with life's joys, pleasures, romance, socializing, children if you have them, their talents, creativity, artistry, showing off. The sun in the 5th house of Cancer for you is brilliant. And of course you have Venus there as well. What's the catch? Well, Saturn's in your 12th house, opposed by the sun in your 6th house. So maybe you're going to be asked to work some overtime. Maybe your more psychological needs are feeling the strain of Saturn in your 12th house. But having Jupiter, your co-ruler, along with Neptune, both forging fantastic links. Jupiter with the sun, Neptune with Venus, both the sun and Venus in your sister water sign of Cancer. I think this is a full moon that has more upsides to it than challenges for you personally. But it doesn't change the fact that the moon is in the deep freezer in the sign of Capricorn. So maybe there is some parts of your social interaction which may need recalibrating. You know, you may feel that there's some people that are not giving you enough attention or support. Some people may feel that you're too focused on your needs and showing off your talents, and they may be thinking, well, why haven't you been in touch? It's always a two-way street, isn't it? So try to find the balance and prioritize the relationships that are most important to you. But I would try to be more outgoing, to connect with others, to have some playtime, because I think it can be enriching, because as ever, you'll probably be very self-sacrificing somewhere in the mix, and that opposition between Saturn and Mars could leave you a little bit short of vitality at times, but there's enough there to give you the innate desire and charm and personality to draw some magic to you over the next couple of weeks. That concludes the 12 zodiac sign forecast and my deep dive for the Capricorn full moon of the 24th of June 2021. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care, stay safe, and goodbye.